it's only Jeff.
This is for Sandy. Jeff Ferrata with the Oakland Tribune. Sandy, can you talk about the terms of the contract, the length, the dollar amount, and also what you will be able to do for Sonny's assistant coaching staff financially?
The first one is we have a term sheet that we have come to an agreement on. We are working on the contract itself, which then will ultimately need regental approval, so it will be made public at that time. The answer to your second part, Sonny and I are committed to working together to provide the resources that are necessary to bring the very best college football staff to Berkeley.
Tim. John.
John Crumpack with the Chronicle. For Sonny, looking at your resume, the high-scoring offense, that's I agree that it'll be an entertaining show. But then the flip side, you look at your defense this last season at Louisiana Tech, and it was at or near the bottom of the standings. Is that one? Does it follow if you have this kind of offense? Is the defense just by course going to give up a lot of points, or can something be done to have a better defense, especially here?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, you know, we did have a bit of an anomaly this year. We were #1 in the country in offense, and I think last in defense, which is something that's a little bit unusual. Obviously, it's something we know that we need to get addressed. The thing that I think I can refer to, I think, is our season year before last. We led the Western Athletic Conference in total defense, #1 defense in the conference that year. And what we try to do as coaches, and I believe your #1 job as a coach, is to figure out what you have. What's the personality of your football team? What are your strengths? In that particular year, we were starting with a true freshman quarterback, and we had a lot of good young defensive players that we knew were going to be good players. And so our focus that year was, hey, let's play great defense. Let's protect the football and offense. Let's make sure we punt well. We led the country in that punting. And we didn't turn the ball over and won a conference championship. We graduated a lot of those players. We had a lot of offensive players returning the following year. We knew we were going to have a dominant offense because we were going to be so young defensively. And so we figured out a way to win. And what we had to do was outscore people that year. Certainly not something that we want to make a living doing. I mean, we want to play great defense. You know, great defense is like pitching. You know, it's consistent, day in and day out. If you can be a great defensive football team, that's going to allow you to have an opportunity to win every ball game. So, you know, my #1 job is going to be to go out and hire the best defensive coordinator I can find in the United States. I've got 4 or 5 names right now that I plan to interview, and go get the best one, bring him here, and combine, you know, great defense with great offense and great special teams, and try to go win a championship.
Stay over here on the left.
Sonny, Antonio Gonzalez with the Associated Press. Just curious, what's the last 24, 48 hours been like for you personally from an emotional standpoint and a travel standpoint?
Where am I? It's been good. You know, you know, that's the nature of the way these things go. It's funny, you know, things happen and then they sometimes stall, and then all of a sudden it goes fast. And so the last 48 hours has been incredibly interesting. You know, the excitement about the possibility of this job working out, I think, kept me up late at night, just considering the possibilities. Because I have so much enthusiasm for this place. You know, coaching against Cal when I was at Arizona, coming to Berkeley to play, just seeing what this place was all about and getting a taste for it, you know, made me so excited to have an opportunity to be involved in this job. And then as things started to wind down, that anticipation grew, and you know, it's tough. You're waiting to get everything done, but it's a great process. You know, I had a chance to meet with John and Sandy in New York, and then, you know, went back to Ruston, and here I am this morning. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been, you know, we'll look back on it all and say it was the best 48 hours of my life.
Did you say when you met in New York?
What is today?
If you could get us to know what day is what, we could tell you. But, we met on Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Okay, stay over here on the left.
Lindsay Browner from Lindsay Browner from Cal TV. You mentioned that you believe in a correlation between academics and athletics. I'm wondering how you plan on addressing the academic issues on the team and what you see as the root of those issues.
Well, that was what we talked about, honestly, in our team meeting today. Was the theme of that meeting more than anything else was, you know, our job every single day as coaches is to get our players to do their best every day in any endeavor that they choose to be a part of. And so what we have to do from day one is instill expectations, you know, and we're going to expect our players to attend every class, to attend every study hall session, to attend every tutoring session, and not only attend them, but do their best when they're involved in those sessions. And then I think what we have to do is build an overall team that is understands what opportunity they have being here, how fortunate they are to be part of this university, and the opportunities afforded to them. And I think that is, you know, I think that we're all so fortunate to be here. You know, it's like I told our players today. I mean, you know, you're at the #1 public institution in the country, in the #1 city in the country to live in these beautiful facilities with these resources. You know, how could you not wake up every morning excited? How could you not go out there and do your very best? So that's going to be a challenge to our players, is to do their best day in, day out, raise our level of expectations, and get them to buy in and continue to work hard every single day, because we're going to expect the best they have.
Front here with John.
Sandy, as you
I can hear you.
as you looked at the evaluated the football program before hiring Sonny, did you come to the conclusion that discipline, both maybe on the field and in the classroom, was lacking? Was that something you came to sense?
If you're gonna have a good team in anything, whether it's in your business or whether it's a college team or a pro team, you have to have team members that buy in and who are held accountable and who are disciplined about what they go after. And obviously, at the college level, you're talking about that both from an academic pursuit standpoint and from a physical and athletic standpoint. And so that's, I mean, I look for that in every coach we've hired, every coach I've hired in 32 years.
But the question I had was this program lacking discipline in those two areas prior to hiring?
Well, I certainly think if you look in particular at where we were academically, you can't help but think that more discipline, more structure, more accountability could certainly help that situation.
Back left. Frank, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sonny, can you talk about the challenges that you're going to face coming into the recruiting cycle at this point, and especially in a new conference and a new region?
Yeah, I think, you know, actually this is not a bad time to come in. Anytime you have a coaching search, you know, you get a bit of a late start, but, you know, to Cal's credit, this happened very quickly, and so it's given us time to get in here and you know, get some work done on the recruiting front this week, and all of next week we'll have an opportunity to get out and see, you know, both current commits and prospective student athletes. So I think it was done in a very timely manner. You know, I think when you do make a change, you are behind a little bit. So we're going to be reaching out to our current commits. Obviously, that's going to be our #1 goal, is to retain those commitments and continue to build those relationships with those players. Because I believe recruiting is about relationships and about trust and establishing trust. And so we need to get to know them, and they need to get to know us. And like anything, we'll evaluate the fit, and that's kind of what we're going through. But I think you know, I think Cal sells itself. I think when we assemble our coaching staff will sell itself. And I think that we'll have an opportunity to sign one of the better recruiting classes they've had around here.
Who's the we? Sorry. Who's the we that you're referring to?
I'm talking about next week, being a contact period next week.
Jeff, go.
Sonny, can you talk a little bit more about the coaches who have influenced you, from your dad through Hal Mumme through Mike Leach?
You know, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a coaching family. I think my father was probably the biggest influence on me. Not really even from a football standpoint, but just on a relationship standpoint. You know, how to deal with people, the value of building bridges and bringing people together. I think was one of his strengths. You know, I think he was a great communicator. I think he could relate to players and young men. And I think he was someone that they trusted. I think those are all characteristics that I've tried hard to emulate through the years. And then from a coaching standpoint, was fortunate to get hooked up with Hal Mumme at a young age, who was kind of ahead of the curve in terms of what he was doing offensively in college football. You know, and had some success with the University of Kentucky in the SEC in a tough league, a program that hadn't had a lot of success through the years. So was fortunate enough to go there and then go to with Mike Leach to Texas Tech and kind of elevate that program as well. And Mike, I thought, did an outstanding job. You know, and we scored a lot of points. We moved the football, and then kind of went off on my own and went to the University of Arizona and tried to do it in a little different style, with a little bit different personnel. And then when I had a chance to be a head coach, it was, you know, kind of had a chance to put my stamp on it. You know, I was fortunate to work for Mike Stoops at Arizona. Mike had a lot different philosophy on football than Mike Leach and Hal Mumme had. You know, Mike was somebody who valued defense greatly, and so I had a chance to see how important that was. And so I was really blessed to work with contrasting styles, contrasting personalities. And I think they all prepared me for this position that I'm in today.
When you were at Kentucky, I believe Hal put you in charge of special teams.
He did.
And in charge of calling fake punts. Can you talk about the famous one against Florida?
Yeah, we are you from Kentucky? How do you know that? Yeah, you know, Hal was one of the guys that was, what I value most about Hal and Mike is they are out-of-the-box thinkers. And so what we did at Kentucky, we took a little bit different approach in special teams. And he kind of put me in charge of a unit. He said, okay, we're going to have a punt team, but it's going to be offensive players only. Well, it's usually all defensive players because they run down the field and tackle. So we had to formulate a way to do it with basically 5 offensive linemen, how to block up front and then have other guys cover. And then the fakes kind of came as a result of that. And I think we ran, one year I was there, I think we ran 11 fake punts and 9 of them successfully. And as you mentioned, I think we ran 3 in one game against Florida, if I'm not mistaken, and got all 3 of them. So Steve Spurrier was not real happy about that.
Antonio, go next, and then come back here.
Sandy, how many people would you say you personally interviewed, and at what point was the moment where you realized that Sonny was sort of your guy?
I met with Sonny early on in the process, and I will tell you when, and I haven't told him this yet, but when he walked out of the room, I said to myself, I think that's the guy. And we were fortunate to have great interest in this position, and I felt like in doing my duty to the university, I needed to do a full vetting of what was available. We did meet with a relatively large number of folks, and but I kept coming back to Sonny. I kept coming back to Sonny.
When you say relatively large, are we talking a half dozen, a dozen?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay, Ryan.
Between those two numbers.
Coach, didn't use tight ends much in the past few years at Louisiana Tech. Cal's got a lot of them. Is that something you're going to adapt to?
Yeah, you know what we do, the thing I like most about what we do offensively is that, you know, we figure out who the best players are, you know, and so what we'll do every day, and I talked to the team a little bit about this today, we go in there and we rank our players by position every day. And so we're constantly trying to make sure, okay, look, we want to have our 5 best offensive linemen playing at the same time. You know, if you got 3 centers or your 3 best guys, you know, we're going to move some guys around, get our best 5 on the field. And it's the same thing at the tight end, running back, fullback, wide receiver positions is, you know, we're going to figure out who's the best 5, who's the best 8, who's the best 10, who's the best 12, and then try to put those guys in positions to be successful. And so, you know, if we have tight ends that we feel like are our best players, we're going to play with them. You know, and that was my challenge when I went to Arizona. You know, my first year there, we recruited a pretty decent little player named Robbie Gronkowski, and you know, ended up being a decent player. And you know, and he played tight end for us. And again, I was someone who hadn't really had a background in tight ends, and so Robbie happened to be one of our better players, so we carved out a role for him and really changed our offense and took it to another level. And so that's what our offense is all about, is finding players, finding out what they can and can't do, asking them to do the things that they can do, and not doing the things that they're not capable of doing. So, You know, if that means playing with 7 linemen, we're going to play with 7 linemen, be creative in that way. You saw us this year at times line up with 3 running backs. There were times we lined up with 5 wide receivers and no running backs. We, played with 2 offensive tackles as tight ends. And so, we're figuring out who the best guys are and going to put them in those situations.
Go back and then up front here.
Yeah, for Sandy or John, what progress, if any, has been made on negotiating Jeff Tedford's buyout package?
We're just still in the process of working out the details with him, so we can't really talk about it.
Go Jeff up front, away from the microphone, please.
Sonny, for those of us who don't see your team actually play very often, but hear about it, can you talk a little bit about sort of, it's a spread offense, but it's not strictly a spread option. It doesn't look like your quarterback runs an awful lot. What type of guy do you need to play that position for your team?
Well, it kind of goes a little bit back to what we just talked about, honestly, is, if we have a quarterback that can run, we're going to run it. And all those possibilities exist within the offense. And I think in a perfect world, we would have a running back that's mobile and could carry the ball 8 to 10 times a game, if it was a perfect world. We haven't had that at Louisiana Tech. Our guys have been more pocket guys. And so, that's kind of the style of play we've adjusted to. But we're a different team where we're not a true spread option team. I mean, it's not going to be Oregon spread, but it's going to be, and it's not going to be, Texas Tech spread. We run the football a lot. I think we ended up in the top 15 in the country in rushing, and we were in the top 10 in passing. So it's a diverse offense that can throw the ball, can run the ball, that creates matchups. We're real big into running the ball into good numbers and throwing the ball into good numbers, and identifying those things and doing that by personnel and by formations. And so, a lot of our offense has different calls in it, double calls, pass versus this, run versus this, and so it's really a simple offense that is a lot really highly predicated upon doing things that the defense is giving you.
A pocket quarterback can play for you, though.
Yeah, a pocket quarterback can certainly play, and so can a mobile quarterback.
Go on the side and then John.
Okay, this is for you again, Coach Dykes. Do you plan on keeping any of the existing position coaches, or what are you going to do in regards to personnel? Yeah,
the first thing we'll do is meet with those guys individually, and I have some ideas what I want to do with my staffing. Nothing's set in stone at this point, but I'm going to meet with them. I mean, there's obviously great coaches here at Cal. I've coached against them. I have great respect for them. I've gotten to know some of these guys through the years, and they're really outstanding football coaches and outstanding people. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't meet with them and see what their vision for Cal and what the vision for the future is, and see how it fits. As I said earlier, I'm a big believer in how do things fit together. And so, the most important thing I'll do is hire staff. I really believe that. I mean, because these guys are around our young men day in and day out. They're the ones that get to know them at the personal level. They're the ones that are coaching them. They're the ones that are guiding them, mentoring them. And so it's so important to not only have an X's and O's, to have a strength in X's and O's, but also to have a strength in those aspects, those other areas that we just talked about. And it's all about fit. It's all about personality. It's all about, I think putting a staff together is about young people, old people, optimistic people, pessimistic people. I think you want to have a little bit of all those bases covered. So old grouchy guys and young optimistic guys have an ability to work very well together.
Go John up front, and we'll come over to the other side.
Sonny, have you had any chance, any time at all to, or what do you know about the players on this team? Anything at all about the ability or characteristics?
Yeah. I think, I've had an opportunity to delve into it a little bit. Most of the quarterbacks I knew because we recruited those guys either at Arizona or at Texas Tech. They all were highly regarded players. And so I'm pretty familiar with most of them. I know that there's some outstanding young receivers in the program. I think that, as was alluded to earlier, I think there's some tight ends that can do some things that are unique, and will give our offense some diversity. You know, and then defensively, I think that, you know, I know that you know, I think we need to get bigger and more physical up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think that's something that, an area that we're going to have to address here as we move forward in recruiting. You know, I think it's imperative with the physical play that happens in this league that you're big on both sides of the line, and I think recruiting always starts for us with offensive and defensive linemen. I think it's where you build your program. And so it's going to be important for us to go out and recruit those type of players. But you know, I've had a chance to look at it, but I think the thing that's most important is for me to get in there, look at the film, start looking at the tape, and start seeing what guys can do. Because I think, you know, sometimes a change of style will benefit players, and sometimes it'll hurt other players. And so how certain guys have performed in the past is certainly not an indication necessarily on how they're going to perform in the future.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions here on this side and then back here, and then that'll probably wrap up this portion. We've got a busy schedule ahead, and we want to be able to allow some time for one-on-one and some other interviews here as well. So, Ryan, if you want to go ahead.
How you doing, Coach? Ryan Macaniana for Comcast Sports Tampa area. This season marks the 75th anniversary since the last time Cal won the Rose Bowl. I know you talked about how important, I know you tweeted how important it was. This should be the goal for every Pac-12 program. What can you tell the long-suffering alumni as far as what this would mean to reach that program, to get the program to that level again?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's obviously everybody's goal in this program is to reach the Rose Bowl. It means you win a conference championship. And, you know, and that's why you coach, that's why you play, is to be part of championship football teams. I mean, there's nothing like being a part of a championship team. And so it's you know, it's going to take a lot of work. You know, the thing we have to do is focus on the small tasks. You know, building a winning football program, honestly, is a process. It's a day-to-day, and I'm a big believer in you have to go, you got to complete step A before you can get to step B, before you can complete step B. You know, and you have to continue to move forward every single day. And so our goal is going to be to improve every single day, to be accountable to each other every single day, to start to develop as a team, and a team that's better collectively than we are individually. And those are things that as a head coach, I mean, that's my job. You know, that's what I do. Day in and day out, I'm constantly going to be getting input from our players. You know, what can we do to provide better services to you to allow you to be more successful? And at the same time, you know, we're going to be laying out demands. So it's a process. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not, it's going to be a long, arduous process. How many years is it going to take? I don't know. Is it going to be next year? I don't know. You know, what's the future hold? I can't answer that question, but I do know that that's what's going to drive us every day. Every single day when we get in our car and we come to work, our goal is going to be get to a Rose Bowl, not only get there, but to win it.
Good. Back here.
Coach Jim McGill, Barron Cider. You mentioned hitting the ground running, recruiting, and also hiring your staff within the next 10 to 14 days. Obviously, you can't do it all yourself. Do you hope to have some online within the next couple of days to help you in that recruiting effort?
Yes, I think so. I think we could have you know, as many as 3 or 4 possibly by Monday. You know, we'll have to see. There's logistics involved in that, and you know, there's always it's always happens a little slower than you want it to, but you know, it's imperative that we get guys hired and get them out there as quickly as we can. You know, what we have to do is, again, go build relationships, and it all starts locally for us. You know, we've got to get out into the high schools locally. We've got to get out to the high schools in the Bay Area. We've got to get out to the high schools in the surrounding areas. And then we've got to obviously get the state of California covered. You know, every successful football program in the country focuses on recruiting their area and their state. And that's going to be something that's paramount to our success here. We're going to need to, you know, improve our recruiting and improve our relationships with high school coaches and be visible.
And we'll wrap up here this portion with Jeff. If you'll wait for the microphone just a moment.
Sonny, on what you were just talking about, is it important, given that most of the assistant coaches you've had at Louisiana Tech probably don't recruit the same regions that you'll recruit here, to have some carryover from the existing staff?
Yeah, you'd actually be surprised. Some of the guys that I plan on hiring have many, many years of experience recruiting in California. The great thing about this state here is that, you know, everybody at some time or another, if you're in the coaching profession, has recruited California. And most of these guys have done it extensively and done it over time. So there's existing relationships, and as I said earlier, recruiting is about relationships, about establishing trust. And, you know, and when they get to know our coaches and the kind of people that they are, I think it's going to allow us to make inroads in recruiting. But most of the guys I'll be hiring will have had experience in the state of California recruiting.